So, how long have you not met him in person already?
I was here. I was.
I'll say hi to our audience in Southeast Asia and beyond. We are hoping that we've got some crowd as well coming all the way from Australia and beyond. Because
Mm.
you've known Peter Gold, one of the prolific Islamic designer based
Oh yeah,
in
he's amazing. Absolutely
yeah
amazing.
yeah
Mm.
he was on our show back in
Oh.
April. Yeah, he was on
Mm.
our show as well. So before I think he was launching his book back in May
Mm.
or something, and then he was on his book tour all over the place. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. All right. So I think we're live now. Let me check. Oke, kita live Mas Ranu ya. Perfect. All right. Good afternoon. Assalamualaikum, everyone. Asians. I'm Muhammad Rizal from the Good News from Southeast Asia. Today we have another special guest, Prof. Fadullah Wilmot, all the way in Hobart, Tasmania, Australia, and we'll be talking about one of the most important topics in the global geopolitical situation today. Insights on Australia's recognition of Palestine. Prof. Fadullah Wilmot was born in Hobart, Tasmania, a long time ago, and of course, he's got a very long list of achievements and services throughout the world. He was the if he's still, I think, Secretary of Brisbane Muslim Fellowship, and he was the Director of Muslim Votes Matter Australia, and he was the Director of Islamic Renaissance Front Malaysia, and then he's also volunteer Australian Muslim Advocacy Network, and also a writer for Australasian Muslim Times. And we'll be talking about more about the behind the scene of the recognition of Palestine by the government of Australia. So I'll give a very brief opening to all of you, whether you're
Yeah,
watching.
by the way, I'm not a professor. Okay.
All right, so how should I address you?
I don't know.
This is Fadlullah?
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
All right, sure,
Yeah.
yeah, perfect. All right, then, all right, I will say brother. Sir. All right. So Australia's recent decision to recognize Palestine as a sovereign state marks a significant shift in its foreign policy, aligning with the growing international consensus. This move, announced by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, reflects Australia's commitment to upholding international law and promoting peace in the Middle East. The recognition is seen as a crucial step towards achieving justice and stability in the region, and it underscores Australia's role as a principal actor in global affairs. And then we'll see from Brother Falula on his insights and elaboration on how it affects the geopolitical situation, not only in Australia and the region, but also in Southeast Asia and beyond. All right, without further ado, Brother Falula.
Um, well, first of all,
Mhm.
Australia's decision is well overdue. It's
Oh yeah,
symbolic.
definitely.
Sorry, is it
Yeah,
right?
go ahead.
It's well overdue. It's
Mhm,
symbolically important
mhm.
because it aligns with more than 140 countries and affirms Palestinian self-determination.
Yeah.
But it is fragile because the opposition party in Australia has already pledged in its statements to revoke it.
Mhm,
And also, it is contingent on Palestine Authority reforms and isolating Hamas. And more importantly, it doesn't deal with the grim reality that Gaza is in ruins, the West Bank is fragmented, and Israel is rejecting Palestinian statehood. And many activists in Australia say that this is really more of a political fig leaf designed to shield Australia's economic and military ties with Israel. And as Ilan Pape and Norman Fankelstein have said, the two-state solution is already dead. So to keep invoking it is to maintain a phantom formula that avoids confronting genocide and apartheid. So that is sort of the thoughts on recognizing Palestine.
Exactly, yeah. And how do you think this recognition will influence Australia's relationship with the Zionist entity and other countries in the region, in the Middle East, or in Asia Pacific in particular?
Recognition does challenge Israel's claim that Palestine is illegitimate. And it may harden the stance of Israel, but it does strengthen Palestine diplomatically. Regionally, it could boost Australia's relations with Indonesia, Malaysia, and the wider Muslim world, who see Canberra moving closer to the international consensus. It does resonate with the global South. It puts Australia more constructively in multilateral forums, but it will strain relations with Israel and complicate Canberra's alignment with Washington. And unfortunately, Australian politicians have agreed to be the deputy of America in the Pacific.
Interesting. And before moving on to the next point, we have an audience from the Indonesian Foreign Affairs Ministry staff as well. So I mean, like, but still, again, you may just feel free to speak out your insights and your opinions on this matter. And then, as someone who has worked in the intersection of faith and development, Brother Fadlullah, how do you see faith-inspired actors contributing to peace-building efforts in the Middle East?
Faith-inspired actors are important, but they're not decisive. 1/3 of Australians report no religious belief, and many evangelical Christians remain strongly committed to Israel. Not all, but many.
Yeah.
And Palestinian Christians, even evangelical Palestinian Christians, are a target. Israel is attacking all Arabs, Christian and Muslim alike. And it is now eliminating Christian villages in the West Bank. It's bombing the third oldest Christian church in the world.
Exactly, yeah.
So faith-based actors, but even so, churches, mosques, progressive Jewish groups, interfaith coalitions have played an important role in mobilization. The 300,000 strong march in Sydney Harbour Bridge and the nationwide protest on the 24th of August, and there's another one coming up in October, does reflect a coalition. Progressive Jewish groups have called for sanctions on settlement goods. Muslim organizations have mobilized, through Muslim Votes Matter, to make Gaza an electoral issue. I think these voices together made recognition politically unavoidable.
Right. And given the fact that, well, right over 300,000 people mobilized themselves of multi-faith backgrounds back last month in Sydney, do you believe that the protest next month in October will be so much bigger than the one that took place in August? And do you believe Australia's recognition of Palestine reflects a shift in how faith and diplomacy intersect in international relations?
I'm not sure. I don't think Australia or any government takes a moral stand. Recognition was forced by social justice groups, by progressive political parties, by trade unions, and faith-based voices coming together. Progressive Jews, Christian networks, Muslim organizations framed it as a moral duty. I think the lesson that must be learned from this is grassroots mobilization, grounded in values and faith, can reshape foreign policy even against powerful lobbies and a very hostile media landscape that we face in Australia.
Wow, that's very surprising. And talking about the grassroots movement and mobilization and the humanitarian implications on all of this happening in the past 700 plus days, what humanitarian implications do you foresee arising from Australia's recognition of Palestine, particularly in regards to aid and support for Palestine or the Palestinian communities in both Gaza and the West Bank?
Yes, recognition does give some weight to the humanitarian access needs that Australia can say, yeah, we recognize, and therefore humanitarian access is important. But symbolism will not save lives in Gaza unless it is followed by action, suspending arms exports,
Right.
banning settlement goods, enabling humanitarian corridors. Palestinians will continue to suffer. So recognition is a beginning, not an end.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not the destination, but it's a process that will
hopefully
sort of entail more efforts from collective effort from the global communities, correct? And then the following point will be, how might this recognition impact the delivery of humanitarian aid in Gaza and the West Bank? Again, like, do you think with the recognition it will be so much better, so much easier, or again, with the current situation, what the Zionist entity is doing, intensifying their assault?
Israel controls the borders. It bombs the crossings. It bombs the aid convoys. And it's now blowing up what is left of Gaza City. So recognition doesn't change what Israel is doing, but it does strengthen the case for humanitarian corridors and pushes back against the criminalization of UN agencies and NGOs. It does reinforce Palestinians as citizens of a state with rights under international law. So that does give some strength, of course.
Interesting. And do you think the challenges that can be anticipated by the Australian government with this recognition will face in its efforts to support Palestinian statehood, and how might this be addressed? What kind of challenges do you think? I mean, like, it will be announced during the UN General Assembly sometime this month. So, Prof, Brother Fadlullah.
Just to add about, it is unlikely that Australia will support the ICC and the ICJ cases. So this is important. So this is the problem that it's facing, and on the ground, aid delivery is blocked by Israel. It's very difficult. And what was your question? Sorry.
What challenges do you anticipate Australia will face in its efforts to support Palestinian statehood, and how might this be addressed?
So the two greatest challenges in Australia are domestic and the US alliance. So you have domestic challenges and the US alliance. These are the two big challenges to Australia in its foreign policy. Powerful Zionist organizations, AJAC, the Zionist Federation, and Advance, they dominate the media narratives. They influence both major parties. And then we have the Murdoch media, which is also active in America and in the UK. And right-wing social media, funded in many cases from the US. So US pressure, Israeli retaliation will also constrain action. So this means civil society will need to keep mobilizing and pressing for arms exports, suspensions, sanctions, and backing for international courts.
And talking about the mobilization of the civil society, do you think they can put pressures, like a much heavier and harder pressures to the government and all dimensional aspects in the Australian community? For example, if the protest next month will be so much bigger than the one that took place in Sydney in August.
Uh, it will put pressure on the government, but the government will listen if there is electoral consequences. So we have to prove, the community has to prove through the political parties that this complicity in genocide will have political consequences, because that's all that matters. And Australia has one advantage over the US and the UK. Australia has compulsory voting, compulsory registration of voters, and it has preferential voting, which means if your first choice doesn't win, you distribute the preferences to until somebody gets 51%. So that means Australian people have more tools to put pressure on politicians than in the US or the UK.
Interesting. And do you think any of the Southeast Asian nations or ASEAN in itself can play an important role in sort of supporting Australia in this sort of efforts of the Palestinian recognition? Say Indonesia or Malaysia or any other Southeast Asian nations.
Well, yes, but Australia need to realize that. Sorry, I missed your question. Sorry.
Yeah. So, do you think any of the Southeast Asian nations, such as Indonesia or Malaysia, can play a more significant role in putting pressures on the Australian governments to move forward with not beyond the Palestinian state recognition, say sanction or the open or the break of the siege of the aid entering to the
I don't
Gaza?
think either Malaysia nor Indonesia can put pressure on Australia. They can raise their concerns, but Indonesia and Malaysia could come to the General Assembly and call for action on a General Assembly resolution on uniting for peace, which would allow nations to overcome the US veto on action. And that could be done. But that would mean Indonesia, Malaysia, and other concerned Muslim governments, for example, could work together with other governments to put pressure so that you could have military action against Israel. You could even, Malaysian Prime Minister once said, Israel should be suspended from the United Nations, and I agree. So
Right.
if Indonesia and Malaysia came together and said, we want to suspend Israel from the United Nations, so that then it would force nations to stand up and be counted. I doubt whether Indonesia or Malaysia could put pressure on Australia, as you asked, but that would put pressure on the world,
right.
because Israel has to be held accountable.
Right.
And
And
don't forget, Israel has been persistently killing every Hamas leader that was negotiating for peace.
right.
That
Yeah.
they come together, they are accepting a proposal, and then they're killed.
Right. Yeah. And they are breaching other countries' sovereignty, like what they did in Qatar earlier this month.
Qatar, Iran,
Yeah.
Syria, Iraq,
Yeah.
Lebanon. So, yeah, and don't forget the 11 to 12,000 Palestinians who are held in Israeli jails, subject to torture. So Israel has to be held accountable according to international law.
Right.
So that yeah.
And 3 points that follow what you have just said about the U.S. veto. Do you think the rights to veto should be abolished in the United Nations system? Because it has been showing us time and time again that it's just slowing down, or if not stopping or halting the peace process, Brother
there
Fadlullah.
is a, there is a whole discussion about the role of Security Council. It
Mm-hmm.
it it is it puts into power the winners of the Second World War.
Mm-hmm.
So these, I mean, for example, there's not a single African country represented in the Security Council,
Mm-hmm.
and Africa is now becoming one of the its population is going to increase tremendously, and has increased tremendously.
Yeah.
Um, Britain is a minor power. France is a minor power.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it, um, China
Russia.
and Russia are two major powers, as is America. There are three major powers.
Mm-hmm.
But the way the Security Council has been designed puts the whole UN in sort of a system that no action can be taken if one of the big powers, one of the Security Council members agree.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is a need for reform of the Security Council, but
Mm-hmm.
it's never going to be easy, because once you have these five powers, they don't want to give up their authority, even
Mm-hmm.
though France and Britain are negligible powers compared to Indonesia, for example, or to India,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or to Africa as a whole.
Right. Yeah. African Union, you meant.
Yeah, the African Union. Yes.
Right. And another question, I think we all have seen the proposal proposed by the Malaysian Prime Minister for the suspension of the Zionist entity earlier. What is your take on this? And then do you think Australia will support this kind of proposal being moved forward in the UN General Assembly this month?
I doubt whether Australia would support that.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, will the Muslim countries have the guts to support that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because you saw the meeting of the OSCE.
Yeah.
Um, what they made statements, but what action are they considering? What they should do, they should
Yeah.
say, we 57 countries back the ICC and ICJ cases against Israel.
Yeah.
They say we want the Uniting for Peace mechanism in the US General Assembly that enables the General Assembly to act when the Security Council is paralyzed, like they did in Suez. But the
Mm-hmm.
real test, will the Muslim countries, will Canberra go beyond symbolism?
Right.
They have to follow with tangible humanitarian and diplomatic steps.
Right.
So we need tangible humanitarian, diplomatic, and legal measures.
Yeah. And
And
full. Yeah.
the disappointing thing is the OIC said nothing about Uniting for Peace mechanism, nothing about expelling Israel from the UN.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, having said that, are you also supporting the international or UN-led international military intervention to stop all of these what's happening in Palestine?
Yeah, if the General Assembly could come for the
Yeah.
Uniting for Peace mechanism in
Mm-hmm.
the General Assembly,
Yeah.
then it means military action could be taken. Of course, Israel will object, America will object, England will, UK will object, France will object. But
Mm-hmm.
if countries do come together for that, then you could have military, because Israel is not going to listen to nice words. Israel will only respond to force.
Yeah.
And as long as Trump is in the White House, there is almost no chance America is going to change its support for Israel. Even though within the mega movement now, as you can see, there is a division. Some people are critical now of this
Yeah.
blind support for Israel. You have people like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens
Yeah.
standing up and saying we should no longer support. But they are still a minor voice in
Right.
response to the huge funding and power of the pro-Israeli lobby in
Despite,
America.
yeah, I agree. Despite them having like massive followings on the internet, and then we have
Yeah,
seen
no,
what
and
happened to
despite the
all
majority
of
of
them.
American people and
Yeah.
Western people as a whole saying that Israel is committing genocide and Israel needs to be taken into account.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And then especially that the one of the UN entity has announced that Israel has committed genocide in Palestine
Yeah, sure.
2 days ago. And next point, Brother Fatlullah, how can Australia balance its relationships with both the Zionist entity, in this case, and Palestine while pursuing a more active role in the peace process? I know it has been a very ups and downs for France, and then President Macron mentioned that he will open his embassy, and then he will allow the Palestinian government to open their embassy as well in Paris. What's your take?
Balance doesn't mean moral equivalence. Dialogue with Israel is not going to have any impact. So the current government and any government should take a stand against occupation, apartheid, and war crimes. Especially now, starvation is being used as a weapon of war. And
Yeah.
now it's credible to say that there are at least 660,000 victims of this genocide, which means
Yeah.
more than a
10
quarter
times.
of the population, more
Yeah.
than a quarter of the population of Gaza has died, has been
And,
killed.
and 10 times as much as officially reported in
Yes.
most major news outlets, right?
Yeah,
Six-
you see, you if you look at the people killed because of bombs,
yeah,
but you don't have how many are under the collapsed buildings.
rebels.
Now
Yeah.
you have people dying of starvation. You have
Mhm.
people dying because they couldn't get cancer treatment, because they
Yeah.
couldn't get medical treatment.
Yeah.
So that is why the figure is 660,000. So it may be by the time this war ends, half the population of Gaza will have been killed.
Mhm.
So uh, Australia has to make it clear: ceasefire is not enough. Peace
Mhm.
negotiations have to be held. Ethnic cleansing is a red line. Now,
Mhm.
and they have to include the current war crimes in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. They have to
Right.
be part of the negotiations.
Yeah.
And the release of Palestinian prisoners who are being
Mhm.
tortured in
Yeah.
Israeli torture camps.
Yeah. And having said that about the Australia's recognition of Palestine position, how the Australian government's recognition of Palestine position it within the global South, as you mentioned it earlier, and what opportunities or challenges might arise from this. Like, do you think Australia will take the lead among the global South countries in the recognition of Palestine? We've seen during the vote in the UN earlier that there's so many nations in the Pacific, they were against the vote. So, Brother
Yes,
Fadullah.
Papua New Guinea and some other countries. I,
Yeah.
I think recognition brings Australia closer to the world, the majority of the world, and
Mhm.
of course the global South, which is the world's majority anyhow. It
Mhm.
does give a bit more credibility. It could with
Yeah.
Malaysia and Indonesia and the OSCE. So that shows that sometimes Australia can disagree with America. But
Mhm.
credibility needs consistency. And if
Right.
Australia, like it is still exporting weapons to Israel, refuses to sanction settler products, then they're not uh, keeping their words consistent with their actions.
Mhm.
Or no, keeping their actions consistent with their words.
Exactly, yeah. And then as a middle power, this is the last point that we'll highlight, but then after this we'll take more questions from the audience. There are so many already on the list. So you got another half an hour. But as a middle power, what role do you see Australia playing in facilitating dialogue and cooperation between the Zionist entity and Palestine? Like probably in this case, playing the role of what Qatar has been doing as mediator. Lord
Yeah,
Fadlullah.
as a middle power, Australia can't impose anything, but it could amplify the multilateral response. So it could support humanitarian corridors. It will never back the ICC and ICJ, but it could, as I said earlier, support the Uniting for Peace mechanisms at the UN if they do come up, if the Muslim countries have the guts to put these resolutions to the UN.
Mm-hmm.
But the real test, is it going to go beyond symbolism? It has to be followed by tangible humanitarian, diplomatic, and legal steps. If if Australia does take even more tangible steps, then it could play a role. But its role will be to support other initiatives rather than taking initiative by itself, because it's a middle power. Yeah.
Interesting. I know it's very tricky situation that Australia is in at the moment. But this is a question from the audience. What is the biggest impact for Australia on the recognition of the state of Palestine itself, internally or regionally, or even globally? Like, do you think it will give positive or negative reverberation to Australia geopolitical roles?
Well, you have the for the right wing,
Mm-hmm.
for the opposition party in Australia, they obviously object to this. And if the opposition party in Australia comes to power, they will undo the recognition. So
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to change. But Australia's recognition goes along with countries like France and the UK, even though it's conditional. It's still it becomes a part of a global movement. If you
Mm-hmm.
remember, uh, there was a global movement about the ozone layer, and you
Mm-hmm.
had to ban the harmful chemicals which harm the ozone layer. So alone, one country can't solve it. But if more and more countries come on board, then you get a global consensus. So in that sense, Australia's recognition, together with other countries, is important. And
Interesting.
it means that Australia will need to think more clearly about their link with the US. The US got Australia involved in illegal wars in Afghanistan and in Iraq and even in Vietnam, which were not in the national interest of Australia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Australia has to be willing to stand up to America and say, "This we are going to take decisions based on our national interest and on international law."
Mm-hmm. And now the next question from Adelida Yusuf. In Brunei, beyond symbolism, what tangible diplomatic and legal benefits could Australia's recognition provide to Palestine, and how would this help create a more equal negotiating situation with Israel?
It's part of the global effort to
Mhm.
to bring the suffering of the Palestinians to the global consensus that something must be done.
Mhm.
Australia hasn't sort of proposed anything more practical than that. It's still sending weapons to Israel.
Hmm.
It still hasn't banned settlement goods.
Yeah.
So I don't. It is a step in the right direction,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's going to have much impact. Yeah, sorry.
And do you think that the civil society mobilization can put pressure to the Australian government to stop sending arms to the Zionist entity?
Well, it worked in the UK. One of the Israeli arms factories were closed.
Yeah, Elbit system.
Yes,
And do you
and
think
I
it will
think
work in
we have to
Australia?
keep it up in Australia. We have to keep pressure on Australia, and they can't hide behind the fig leaf that, oh well, it's not direct arms sales, it is parts for aeroplanes. So
Mhm.
we have to keep up the pressure.
Right. And now there's another question from all the way in Kalimantan, Samarinda. Um, I know it's kind of up in the air question. When do you think the genocide will be over? I know that recently the leader of the Zionist regime, Netanyahu, mentioned that the war might take or might last for the next decades, and that's beyond everybody's comprehension. But what's your take, Brother Falullah?
It's not going to end until Israel is forced to end it. That's it. Unless Israel is forced to end it, nice talk, diplomacy is not going to work with Israel. Only force will end it. And if the world doesn't come together and force Israel to end the genocide, it will continue.
Mm-hmm. And
There's no recognition by Israel that they'll take notice of diplomatic niceties or complaints.
mm-hmm. And what element do you think can put pressure or force Israel to stop this? Like, for example, the international military intervention, the suspension from the UN, the isolation from all world events.
Yes.
What's your
Yeah, like we have to put pressure on
sanctions?
FIFA. We have to put pressure
Yeah.
on FIFA. These people who run the World Football Association, Israel should be expelled. They shouldn't be a part of it. We did this with apartheid South Africa, and
Mm-hmm.
we have to do the same thing with apartheid South Africa that we that with Israel that we did with South Africa. And as Bishop Desmond Tutu said, what is happening in Israel is worse than what happened in South Africa.
Yeah.
Because the apartheid regime was not aiming to kill every single African.
Mm-hmm.
The Israeli regime is aiming to kill every single person in Gaza or expel them.
Right.
So what is happening in
Committing
Gaza is worse than what
yeah.
happened in apartheid South Africa.
So, having said that, do you think the world should take a much stronger stance against this apartheid ethno-state Israel
Definitely.
than what they did
Of
in?
course, and the lead should come
Mm-hmm.
from countries that say they stand up for international law, which is Western countries, and
Mm-hmm.
from the Muslim countries. But
Mm-hmm.
let us not forget, this is not just a Muslim issue. This is
Right.
an this is a humanitarian issue because Christians in Gaza and in the West Bank
Yeah.
and in Jerusalem are equally being killed and ethnically cleansed, as are Muslims.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. So it's multi-faith, it's beyond religious conflicts, I would say.
Yeah, it's not a
It-
religious conflict, yes.
yeah, yeah. So another question from Dian Saleha in Semarang, Indonesia. With the opposition vowing to reverse the decision if it comes to power, how can the current government solidify this policy so that it becomes a durable, bipartisan pillar of Australia's foreign policy, regardless of who is in power? Like it would be the constitutional effort of the Australian
Um,
government, no matter who is in power?
I don't think in Australia that's going to be possible because
Mhm.
we have foreign policy is not never part of a constitution. So what we have to do is put pressure on the political parties that this is a wrong policy.
Mhm.
And we have to show to the political parties in Australia that support for genocide is a political liability, even though you're getting lots of money from the pro-Israeli lobby. Giving support to genocide is going to harm you politically. That's the only way to do it.
Mm. And now another question from Surabaya. Indonesia again. What do you think the best thing to do now? Is military intervention is on the table? Do you think the UN will approve this during this general assembly this month? How do you think we can materialize this, make this happen, instead of just symbolic
Yes,
meeting?
unless this resolution is brought up in the General Assembly, nothing's going to happen. It will have to be a resolution. Some country will have to bring it up in the General Assembly, and they'll have to lobby to get it approved. You can expect America and Israel to put pressure on countries not to approve it, but the only way is to get a victory in the General Assembly, for country to bring it up, to lobby and get support. It's not going to happen without planning and action by countries, and that means
Mhm.
domestically, the people need to put pressure on their governments that this needs to be done.
Right. And another question regarding the settlement expansion, as you mentioned earlier. They are expanding beyond the Gaza Strip, and then they are now trying to exactly like as you mentioned, expel every single Palestinian out of the West Bank, and leaving the recognition of Palestinian statehood with nobody in the entity. So, what are the potential solutions to the issue of Israeli settlement expansion in the West Bank, which hinders the creation of contiguous Palestinian state, and exacerbates tensions between Israelis and Palestinians?
There's no solution except uh, forcing Israel to abandon the settlements, but I'm not sure if that is policy. You have 7 million Israelis and 7 million Palestinians on the
Mm-hmm.
same piece of land.
Yeah.
A solution, the world needs to find a solution that these 14 million people can live in peace on that land. As Some people still want to pursue a two-state solution,
Mm-hmm.
uh, where the Palestinians would have 20% of the land or 20% of the original land of Palestine. But other people will say what is needed is a state where there are equal rights for Jews and non-Jews,
Mm-hmm.
a state where there's no apartheid. So many people now are saying the only solution is a one-state solution where everybody has equal rights, and you don't preference one ethnicity or religion over another.
Yeah.
And
And
that
then
but that's a long way in the future. The current but the current situation is we must stop the genocide, stop the ethnic cleansing,
right.
and then we have to sit down and figure out what will be the best solution for this 14 million people, half Jewish and half Arab, Muslim, Christian, and Druze.
Yeah. And then having said that about the two-state solutions, and after the symbolic meeting in Doha, Qatar earlier, Iran rejected the resolutions that was drawn by the Muslim world leaders at the time, saying that they will never ever recognize the state of Israel. So do you think, I don't know, like, are you a firm believer of two-state solution or one-state solution, which is the only state for Palestine?
I think we have to ask the Palestinian people, what do they see as the solution? Because
Mm,
it is their land and their future.
right.
Um, uh, Norman Finkelstein feels that a two-state solution is dead, and so do a number of other uh, Jewish fighters for justice.
Mhm,
So I'm not sure uh, what to say on this situation, because
mhm.
two-state solution seems to be dead.
Yeah,
Seems
I
to be
agree
dead.
with you. Yeah, yeah,
But then a one-state solution seems to be impossible.
right. Yeah.
So that will have to be sometime in the future. But now let's stop the genocide, stop the
Hmm.
slaughter, stop the ethnic cleansing. That should be our aim at the moment. And
Yeah,
then we have to come together as a world community and find a solution.
right. And talking about you asking, let's give it back to the Palestinians. What do they want for their future? And talking about the probably millions of Palestinian diaspora all around the world, about the right of return. What are the possible resolutions to the Palestinian refugee crisis, considering the competing demands of Israelis and Palestinians regarding the right of return and compensation for the displaced persons?
Um, the right of return is enshrined in the UN Declaration on the establishment of Palestine.
Hmm.
So every refugee family should have a right to return.
Hmm.
That goes with it, because how come somebody from Poland, somebody from New York can come to Palestine and get a house, get land, get free medical care, get free education, and the Palestinian who was expelled from their homeland in 1948 or 1967
Yeah.
cannot? And let us not forget, 80% of the people in Gaza are refugees from 1948 and 1967.
Yeah.
So 80% of them are refugees. So
Yeah.
they not only have the right to stay in Gaza, they have a right to return to the places from where they were expelled.
Hmm. Right. And now talking about the Jerusalem status, I don't know if you've read the news about Fiji, who just recently opened their embassy in Jerusalem. How can the competing claims to Jerusalem be resolved, given its significance to both Israelis and Palestinians as a holy city and potential capital for both states? And I also just learned that the Zionist entity, the Israeli government, uh, they prevented some citizens from the Middle Eastern countries to enter Jerusalem, to the Muslim communities from Jordan, from Egypt, to enter Al-Aqsa Mosque. What do you
Mm.
think? What is your take on this?
The original proposal um, for Palestine was that Jerusalem should be an international city
Mhm.
uh, that would under international governance, because it was a holy city for Jews, Muslims, and Christians.
Yeah.
I that's and then it was divided until 1967 between Israeli-controlled Jerusalem and Jordanian-controlled Jerusalem. Um, but the way the immediately Israel took control of East Jerusalem, in defiance of every international norm,
Hmm.
David Ben Gurion told his soldiers to bulldoze all of it was the Maghribi Muslims in front of the wall, the so-called Wailing Wall. So they immediately started dispossessing people in Jerusalem. So Israel is not a sincere protector of the rights of Christian or Muslim minorities. There's no way Israel. They have proven to be. For every prime minister of Israel has proven that they cannot be trusted to protect the rights of non-Jewish inhabitants of Jerusalem. So
Having
so
said
there's
that,
no. This is one issue that has to be resolved, and it is very disappointing that you have a sort of a Christian American ambassador who is not standing up for the Christians in Jerusalem. Mike Huckabee.
And that of course makes the path to peace a much more challenging process. And what steps can be taken to revive meaningful peace negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians, considering the complexities of the conflict? I know it shouldn't be that complex, and the need for a comprehensive solution that addresses core issues.
Israel only understands force and power, so it will have to come to force. Unless the United Nations is willing to act, I don't see any solution as long as Trump is president, because he seems to be unable to challenge Netanyahu on anything. So for the next 3 years, America definitely is going to be supporting Israel in its genocide and its ethnic cleansing. So unless the change, because America is the biggest funder and supporter of Israel. Maybe what is important is to support the not the MAGA base of Trump, who are now questioning the support of Israel by America, and the pro-Israeli lobby in America is really up in arms and really worried about this. They're trying to denigrate. And if you see Charlie Kirk, who was murdered recently, he also was, he's 100% supporter of Israel, but he was beginning to question the actions of Israel. So that MAGA base who is questioning the role of America in Israel probably needs to be supported, because the only power that has the power to tell Netanyahu or any Israeli government what to do is America.
Interesting. So now let's talk about, well, I mean, of course, America has its own portion in sort of influencing what's happening in Palestine, and to stop these atrocities committed by the Zionist regime. Last point before we conclude this beautiful and I mean, like it is really emotional on different levels for everybody at the moment. Let's talk about the Asian powers, especially China, Japan, India, South Korea. Where do you think they are going from here on Palestine issue? I mean, like we've seen that they like Japan and South Korea and India recently they signed a very big deal of bilateral agreement, India and Israel. But how do you see this moving forward in the geopolitical dynamics?
I think Japan and Korea are two different issues. They seem to have quite a strong civil society who are also standing up against genocide. But India, you have another regime in Modi who the Hindutva has a very close relationship with the ethno-nationalism of Israel, because they are very much oppressing the Muslims of India. So I don't see India ever supporting anything against Israel, because it would be supporting Muslims. But they basically, you have a Modi regime is definitely anti-Muslim, and Muslims are suffering in India terribly, and particularly in Jammu and Kashmir. And we have now in the Western countries, within as I said, there's a division in the MAGA, the Trumpists, who are standing up against Israel. But on the other hand, we have the rise of right-wing populism, anti-Muslim, anti-immigrant sentiment in the UK. You had 150,000 people, anti-migrant, anti-Muslim demonstrations in the UK. You have the same thing happening in Australia. The whole ICE, anti-migrant in America. So you have the fascistic regime in Hungary. So you have the rise of right-wing populist regimes all over the Western world, which does not look good for the future of humanity, because and the failure of the Democrats, the Labour Party in Australia, the Labour Party in the UK, the sort of left-wing parties, to deal with systemic problems of low pay, of healthcare, the climate, and all the other issues facing poor people, with the richest people getting richer and the poorer people getting poorer, but attacking migrants and Muslims. So we're going to face a really difficult situation to get the world back on track, believing in humanity, believing in human dignity, believing in international law, and taking responsibility.
And last question, your personal message. I believe millions of us, especially for our audience in Southeast Asia and beyond, most of us, if not millions of the civil society in Southeast Asia and the region feel helpless and powerless in this situation. We've done so much, like donating, we've done this and that, but nothing doesn't seem to change. What is your personal message for the civil society to keep pushing forward to make real impacts on this? And I would say also, especially the fact that Global Summit Flotilla is on the way to Gaza to break the siege, to make sure they deliver the aid to the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Your personal message, Brother Falula.
No change is ever achieved without struggle. And no struggle is ever fully successful or complete. The struggle always has to continue. Look what happened when Suharto was overthrown in Indonesia. The young people overthrew Suharto, but then you got the old corrupt politicians back in power. The same thing happened in many countries. You have this effort to overthrow corruption, to establish democracy, to have liberty and human rights, and it was never granted. It is always has to be struggled for. So the only way change will happen is by a mass movement. It has to be the community. People have to come together and struggle. This was a message that Noam Chomsky said. We will never achieve anything unless we keep on struggling, and it comes from in America. Children used to work 80 hours a day. until children went on strike.
Yeah.
So that women didn't get the vote in United Kingdom until they changed themselves to Parliament. So there always has to be a struggle. Now, I think I admire what Sami Hamdi says. Look, you have to be part of the struggle. You may not see the result of that struggle in your lifetime, but you need to be there in the struggle. You have to make. You have to stand up and be counted, and you may come at one stage and you say, "Oh, it's so difficult, it's so hard." No, you are building on the struggle of people before you. You may not see the result in your lifetime, and do you think that as a Muslim, do you think that Nabi Muhammad ever thought there'd be Muslims in Indonesia? No, he didn't have, but it was a struggle of people to spread Islam in Indonesia. It was a struggle of Islam. The Sahaba Abu Bakr established a mosque in Canton in China. So the only way change can happen is that people come together, they struggle, and they keep struggling, and leave the result to God. Because God will be our witness, at least when and maybe when we die, and if we go to heaven, and then we'll meet somebody and they say, "Oh, I just prayed in the church in Gaza. I just prayed in the mosque in Jerusalem."
Yeah.
How did you do that? Oh, who are you? Oh, you are one of the people who struggled in 2025 against the Israeli genocide. And we are the people who saw the success of your struggle. So we have to struggle. We build on the success of our ancestors. Do you think that the people who struggle for independence of Indonesia, do you think that they didn't all live to see the result of their success? So keep struggling, come together, work together, and believe that there will be a better future if we work hard and we struggle with discipline and with planning and with strategy. That's my hope and prayer.
Brother Fadullah Wilmot, thank you so much for your time and for your insightful views on this issue and insights on Australia's recognition of Palestine. We have so far about 7,000 audience across our platforms on Facebook,
Instagram, thank you,
and YouTube, coming from different parts of Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Brunei, Malaysia, Singapore, and beyond. And again, thank you so much for your time. And CAsians, thank you so much for staying with us in this beautiful and insightful yet emotional conversation on this current issue on Palestine. Brother Fadullah Wilmot, Muhammad Reza, from the Good News from Southeast Asia, and I'll see you again in the next few point episode.
Hopefully. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a